Hey Linda, hi Mari, hi Wendy. So as always, we will give it a couple of minutes, give people a chance to get into the group. I'm going to be doing a little demo tonight on how to create the background that I used on this page. So I'm not going to do the complete page. I will explain how I did it. I'm not going to do the complete page, but we're primarily looking at the technique for the background. I'm going to start with the colours that I've got in front of me. I may well select some other colours once I've done the initial demo, just to kind of show you how this technique looks with different colours, etc, etc. So as I said, though, we will just give it a couple of minutes or give people a chance to get in. Obviously, I understand that not everybody can join in live, and this will be available in the guide section under play-alongs, I believe. So if you do want to have a go with me tonight, the kit list was up earlier. You do not have to use the same colours that I'm using. You could choose something else. The only thing I would say is it works really well if you've got some sort of contrast going on, because it just means that the colours stand out against each other. You can, I mean, you can still get a really good look with muted colours. But I find if there's quite a high contrast between colours, it's more vibrant, you know, it's going to stand out. It's going to give you more impact. So I hope we're all well tonight. These are the initial things, as I said, that I'm going to use. I have got myself some bits of cardstock that I will work on. I also did grab a pipette. I didn't put it on the kit list, but I suddenly thought you would be able to get bigger drops using this. So I did grab a pipette as well. And I'm going to show you a couple of different things. I'll show you the initial technique. And then I might do a couple of other things afterwards. And I will explain how I completed this page. This is this is an A5 journal, and it was using some of the new stamps. And I will explain how I finished it. We are not doing a finished page. We're talking about the background today for this demo. So I hope you're all good. Let's see, what's the time? I think we're almost there. I'm not going to mess around too much because I know you're all very busy people. So, okay, so the first thing, I am just using some PaperArtsy Smoothie, Wendy. This is just it's an offcut of PaperArtsy Smoothie cardstock. It really doesn't matter what cardstock you use. It's not going to make any difference to the technique at all. Okay, so you're going to want some cardstock to work on. Okay, and I have done this as well. I'm working on a small piece. I think this is about 5 by 5 inches, I think. However, I did do this technique in the Dilutions journal on a large background page. Okay, so you can do it on a bigger page. It doesn't have to be a small. It doesn't have to be a small page. Just the bigger the page, the quicker you have to work. That's all you need to kind of bear in mind. You have to work very fast. So I've got some cardstock to work on. I've just got a few sheets because I'm going to do a few different colorways just to show you how those look. I've picked out my initial paint colors. I don't know if I put red lipstick or cherry red on the original, but just a red will do. Whether it's cherry red or red lipstick, it's going to work. I've got banana, firebird, a red, cerulean, and I've got some white. Okay, I've got my isopropyl alcohol. So this is 99.9% isopropyl alcohol. And I have already decanted some of that into a little dish. So I've decanted some of that into a little dish so that it is ready to go. Okay, so I've got that in one of my dishes. And then in my other little dish, I have just got some water. So this is... No, you do not need to prime because we're going to be using just our paints. PaperArtsy paints act as a primer, and we're going to be putting a solid layer on the bottom. So you do not need to prime. Okay, my other pot, I've just got some water. It's very important to have some water to use. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily have to be completely clean water. Okay, like so as we go on. you know, obviously I'm going to be cleaning my brushes, so I may well get some paint water into my pot. It is not going to matter, okay? But you definitely don't need to prime. So you want some paint colours. Like I said, my first demo is what I actually did on this original page. So I am going to do Banana, Firebird, a red, whether that be red lipstick or cherry red, and then I'm going to do Cerulean as my top coat. So we'll do that initially. You're going to want a flat brush. Okay, so you're going to want a flat brush to use. I've got a couple of flat brushes just because, and you can see they're different sizes, it doesn't matter. I've got a couple of flat brushes just because it's going to make it easier for me in between, so that I don't need to worry about cleaning my brushes too much. Okay, that's the only reason I've got two brushes, or I've got a couple of brushes. So do not, you know, don't think that you need to. It just means that it's going to be easier for me in between. And you want some sort of splatter brush. I tend to use whatever is on my desk, but I want to keep these separate to the brushes that I'm going to be using with the paint. Okay, you want to keep these separate because these need to be clean. We're just going to use these with the alcohol. And as I said, I didn't add it to the kit list, but if you've got a little pipette, grab that now. Okay, if you haven't, don't. It does not matter. You can drip. You can drip alcohol. Okay, but it's just, I kind of thought of it afterwards and thought, you might get some bigger splashes if you're using a pipette. No worries, Susan. Okay, so I've already decanted my alcohol, so I'm going to put this to one side. I don't need that. So I'll keep it where I can grab it just in case. And I'm going to have my paints at the ready. You're also going to need, a heat tool. Okay, so because you're going to need to dry the layers in between. We're going to need to be drying. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a second. Okay, I'm just going to give you a second so that you can grab anything that you need. And while you are doing that, I am just going to grab some extra water. I'm just going to grab some extra water so that I don't need to worry about changing water in between. So I'm going to give you 2 seconds and we will get started. Okay, how are we doing? So I just grabbed an extra pot of water so that I don't have to worry about when I'm cleaning my brushes in between, you know, and I won't have so much of a problem. Okay, so I hope we're good. So I'm going to just bring this up. I'm hoping you can kind of see what's going on in the background there. You can see there's lots of different colours and they kind of marble together. I'm using the PaperArtsy Smoothie, Claudia, but you can use any cardstock that you have. This will work on any cardstock. So don't get in a panic about which cardstock to use. This will work on any cardstock. As I said, I have used this. I did a page in my Dilutions journal and it still worked exactly the same on the Dilutions paper. So it really doesn't matter what you've got. But you can kind of see we've got this kind of marbling going on in the background, and that's what we're going to do with our alcohol ink. It is a really, really cool technique, and it is different every single time you do it, which I absolutely love. Absolutely love. The possibilities with this are endless when it comes to colorways. Okay, you can, you know, and every single time, depending on how big your drops are, the bigger the brush. Okay, so the bigger the brush with the alcohol, the bigger your drips are going to be. Okay, the smaller the brush, so I just picked out 2. I picked up a sort of mid-sized round brush and I picked a small brush. But I have done this as well with a flat brush, okay, and dipped my flat brush in and used that. So you can use anything. If you've got an actual splatter brush, you can use a splatter brush. It really doesn't make any difference. But just make sure, because obviously they are both clear pots, just make sure that you keep your alcohol separate to your water. It's not going to work if you start dripping water. Okay, so I'm going to bring this in. I'm going to try and come in a little bit. You don't need to be that far away. That's a little bit better, isn't it? We're nice and close up. I am going to grab a flat brush, okay, and I'm going to start with my banana. I'm starting for this particular, I'm starting with my my lightest colour. And I'll tell you the reason I'm doing that. Not, you know, it's not going to make a difference if you're using opaque colours. So if you're using opaque colours, you could do it in any order. But because the three main colours that I'm using are all translucents, okay? And because they're translucents, I want to go from my lightest colour. When I'm doing my layers, I'm going to go from my lightest colour through to my darkest, because if I went in with the dark red first and then layered up and put the orange on top and then the yellow on top of that, it's not going to have the same impact, okay? Because they're translucent colours. If you were using three opaque colours, it really would not matter which order you did this in. You could do it in any order whatsoever, okay? But for this, because I'm using translucent colours and not for any other reason, I'm going to go in lightest to darkest. I'm going to layer lightest to darkest, okay? So I'm going to start with my banana. And this first layer, I am just going to go straight on. I don't need to do anything other than go straight on to my piece of cardstock, okay? And I'm going to go on and I'm going to cover the whole piece of card. Okay, we're just going to go in, cover the whole thing. Not doing anything special. It's when we come to the next layers, we need to do something a little bit different. But yeah, semi-opaque as well, Claudia. I would tend with semi-opaques to go lightest to darkest as well, just to be on the safe side, because some semi-opaques are more translucent than others, if that makes sense. So I just find with semi-opaques or with translucents, I would go light to dark. I'm not saying that it wouldn't look good doing it the other way, and I'm sure you would get a very different look, but for what I'm doing, I would go light to dark. And like I said, if I'm using opaques, I really wouldn't worry. I would go in whichever order I wanted to go in, okay? So I've got my banana down, okay? I don't need to, even though this is a translucent, because I'm working on white cardstock, I don't need to go in and add a second coat. And because we are going to be layering up, I really don't need to worry. But what I do need to do is get this completely dry. So I'm going to go in with the heat tool and I'm going to get this completely dry before we go in with the second layer, okay? PaperArtsy paints really don't take very long to dry at all. So, you know, you can get it dry pretty quick. And if you didn't have a heat tool, it wouldn't take too long in between coats to dry. So the first layer it's always going to be a solid layer. Whether you do that in one colour, and this is what I'm saying, there are variations that you can do on this. Whether you did a solid one colour, or if you did maybe three colours, maybe we'll do that afterwards. But the first layer, you don't need to add any water. You're just going to put your paint colour down. So it's just paint, that's it, done, dusted. Now what you need to do, so I'm going to bring in my paint palette, okay? And I'm going to add, so my next colour is going to be my Firebird. Okay, and I'm going to add some of this to my paint palette so that it is ready to go. Okay, I'm going to get it on there. So I'm just adding, you can kind of see, I've just added some paint to my paint palette so that it is ready for me to use. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to bring in, so I'm bringing in, this is my alcohol. And then this is my little pot of water. In fact, I'll bring you out a little bit so that you can see the paint palette as well. Let's do that so you can see. So this is my alcohol. I'm going to put my, so that I don't confuse the two, I'm going to put my brush in it, ready to go. I'm going to have it there. Hopefully it's not going to fall out, but you know, we never know. So my brush is ready to go with my alcohol. Okay, and this is my pot of water. No, I'm not using watercolours, Deb. I am using the PaperArtsy. You want to use acrylic paints. It needs to be acrylics. Okay, I'm using the PaperArtsy paints, obviously. But it needs to be acrylic paints. To be honest, I've not tried with watercolours. And I'm thinking maybe it would work. In fact, I'm pretty sure it would work. You would get a nice reaction with watercolours, without a doubt. But for today, we're using the PaperArtsy acrylic paints. Okay, so I've got my alcohol is ready to go with a brush. My water, I've got a pot of water sitting here ready to go, and I'm going to take my brush. Let me just. I had another pot of water by my side. I'm just going to take that brush that I just used. And it really doesn't matter because I'm using the tone on tone colours. It doesn't matter if I used the dirty water that I've just, you know, is now very yellow. It doesn't matter, okay? But what we want to do is the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go in to our water pot, okay? And we're going to brush water over the whole of this piece of card, okay? Go straight in, just brush it over. You need to work quite quick. You don't want it to be drying too much. And then I'm going to go straight into my paint and pick up some of my paint colour. So I'm picking up some of my orange. So this is my Firebird. And I'm going to go over the top with my Firebird. Okay, you can see going over the top. And it doesn't matter. It's going to be quite translucent because obviously it's a translucent colour anyway. And we've added water, okay? So I'm just going over. And don't forget, we're going to layer this up. So I'm not worried that this is quite, you can still, and you still want to be able to see the colours that are underneath, okay? Then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to grab my brush, I'm going to run it through my alcohol. I'm going to hold it over the top, and I'm just going to tap. And can you see what's happening? You want to do this quickly because the quicker you do this, you want to do it before that water starts to dry. Okay, and obviously the more you add, the more of a reaction you're going to get. So I'm hoping you can see that happening. Okay, I am going to hold this up because I'm very aware that obviously I have a light source. Let me try and move it a little bit. I've got a light source going on over the top of my desk as well. So, but the more you add, obviously the more it is going to separate and it's going to bring out what's going on underneath. Okay. But it's really important to dry in between. You have to dry in between. I'm just gonna tilt this light up just a little bit so that you don't get so much of a glare. I kind of can't take it off completely because otherwise you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to give this a quick dry and then I can look and see if I want to do any more. Okay, so if I bring that up, I'm hoping you can see I've started getting, I got reaction. Okay, and obviously we're going to be, the more contrast you have, the more contrast colours you have, obviously the more visible it's going to be. And you'll see that when we get to our top layer. Okay, so these are just the bottom layers. So what I'm going to do, let me just clean my brush. So I'm just cleaning my brush back off. And then what I'm going to do, so this time I'm going to go with my red. So whether you're using red lipstick or cherry red, we're going to go with the red. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to get that onto my palette. So I'm going to put that onto my paint palette so it's ready to go. And then I'm going to repeat the process. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me just dry that, just so that we'll just rub that off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm going to go back into the water first, and I want to completely wet the page again. What I really like to do at the end, which we're not going to do tonight, but one of the things that really looks nice at the end is to use the PaperArtsy's gloss glaze over the top. Oh, it looks stunning. So now I'm going to go into my red. So I'm going to pick up my red paint and I'm going to repeat the process. Okay, I'm just going to go over and repeat the process with the red. Doesn't need to look neat and tidy. I'm just going to go in with the red. Done. Back into the alcohol, straight in. Because now we're going to get the two colours. Because the colour underneath obviously is already separated. And now, and you can see because the red is a deeper, more intense colour, you're going to see more of it. And it's nice because you can see the colours that have separated underneath already. That's why it's really important to dry in between. So dry in between your layers, okay? So I'm going to put that to one side. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to dry this layer, okay? And obviously we could leave it like this. There is nothing wrong with that. Like, it is perfectly fine, but we're going to add a real contrast over the top. So it's going to really bring out those colours. We'll get this one dry and then we're going to go in and add our final colour on top. Okay, so let me just wipe this, just so it's not soaking wet. So you can kind of see what we've got is we've got where it's reacted with the paint, but you can see where it previously reacted on the layer that was underneath. So this is why I said you are going to get completely different every single time. So as I said, you can see this large area is where it's just reacted with the red, but you can see these smaller drips underneath are where it reacted, the orange reacted with the yellow. So you see through it. That's why it's really important to dry in between, because it means that it doesn't react any further with the layer underneath, but you'll see what it's done. as it comes, you know, as it comes around, as it comes away and has that reaction. So really, really cool. And then the coolest part, so I am now going to go, my final layer for this one, I'm going to use cerulean. So cerulean is one of my favourite colours, always has been. And this is an opaque paint. Okay, not that it matters, but you get a bit of a different look when you put an opaque down because it will be thicker. Okay, it's going to be thicker over the top. Okay, so, and I've gone for the cerulean because obviously on the colour wheel, the reds and oranges are complete opposite. It's a contrast colour to the blues and the greens. So it's just going to work really, really well, and it's going to give a real contrast over the top. So again, I'm going to get this ready on my mat. I'm going to have it ready to go. Give my brush a bit of a clean off. Okay. Okay. So, and then, so again, we're going to repeat the technique again. Okay, so I'm going into my water. I'm going to brush my water over the top. And this is why I said as well about the gloss glaze, because when you put the water over the top, you get much more vibrant colours. So in my head, when you put the gloss glaze over the top, it's going to make those colours more vibrant. So I'm going straight into my cerulean, picking up my cerulean over the water and go over the top. And even though this is an opaque paint, obviously it's not going to be as opaque because we're going in over water. Okay, but let's go in, let's add. Let's really go in. But you can see we're getting a bit of a thicker layer going on. And then we want to go straight in again to our alcohol. Let's get over the top. And this is where you're going to really see the contrast coming in. This colour combination is stunning. And again, we're getting something very, very different to what we got last time. And you can kind of keep going. You can keep going, you know, as much as you like, really. And keep adding layers. So again, I'm going to give this a quick dry and then we'll look at what we've got. We'll look at what we have. Let's get it dry. Okay, so that's not 100% dry, but you can kind of see the kind of thing that you're going to get. And then one thing that I did, so on my original, if I bring that back in, I did add some white splatter over the top. So I could certainly add some white splatter. But even this one, bearing in mind I used the same colours as I used on the other one, it looks very different. Okay, you're going to get different, you will get different results depending on the size of brush that you use, the size of the drips that you use. you will get something different. So at the moment, I've just done this, and it is quite matte. What I might do at the end, if I can find some, I'm sure I have got some. If I can find some gloss glaze, I might go over this with gloss glaze just to show you what it looks like. But I'm going to put it to one side for a minute. And there's just a couple of areas that needs to dry a little bit more. So I'm going to put that to one side. And I'm going to bring in another sheet. I'm going to bring in another sheet, and we'll try similar. We'll try maybe some different colours, maybe, let's see, what should we do? Okay, right, let's go in. Okay, so I'm going to start with another new sheet. Okay, so we'll start with a new sheet of card. Let's go. I'm going to pick out a couple of different colours this time. Let's see, what have we got? Let's go with Dirty Lime. So let's go with Dirty Lime. What else? I'll tell you what. Let's go with Dirty Lime and Cerise, because they're opposites. And then I think we're going to go with a dark tone over the top this time. I'm going to go with Peacoat. So the cards, it doesn't matter what cardstock you use, Deb. I'm using the PaperArtsy Smoothie card, but you can do this on any cardstock. It will work on any cardstock. Okay? You just want something that's going to hold the water. So I wouldn't use, I wouldn't use maybe printer paper, because printer paper is not going to hold the water that you need. Okay? But other than that, you could use any. So what I think I'm going to do this time is I think I'm going to use a mix of the small, brush, and I'm going to use a pipette this time and see if we get a different look. Okay, so first layer, I'm going to go in with my Dirty Lime. Again, the only reason I'm picking this first is because it's a translucent. My Cerise is a semi-opaque, Peacoat is an opaque. Okay, so I'm going to go in with my Dirty Lime. I just want to see what it looks like. It's nice to see what it looks like with different colours as well. So let's go in, and I love Dirty Lime. Dirty Lime's as close as I've got to one that is fluorescent without actually being a fluorescent. It's so bright. So bright. So I might do something a little bit different this time as well. Why don't we do a little bit? We might do a little bit stamping between layers. We might add a little bit of a stamp. I think we might do. Right, let's give it a quick dry. We want to dry that first layer. Okay. Okay, so that is my Dirty Lime. That is a beautiful colour, beautiful. So let's just clean my brush off again. And as I said, because you don't even have to worry if your water is dirty. I mean, I've got a separate pot because I knew mine was going to get dirty really quickly, because obviously I'm using lots of different colours. But it doesn't matter if it is a little bit dirty, because obviously you're putting your paint over the top. So obviously mine's getting quite gross quite quickly. So what I'm going to do this time, what I'm going to do for my first layer is I'm going to go in. So I'm going to go in with my cerise. So I'm going to get that ready. I'll get that onto my paint palette ready to go. So cerise is a semi-opaque, but this time I'm going to use the small, for this layer, I'm going to use, no, there isn't a limit to how many layers, Linda. You can do as many layers as you like. I've kept it, so this one I'm only doing 3 layers. I've also done it where I've only done 2 layers. I've done it where I've done 5 layers. So you really can do as many or as few as you like. You know, I'm kind of thinking this one could look nice with a white layer over the top and then go back in again. So, and it's just by playing on a small piece of card, you can literally play and see what colours you like, you know, what colour combinations you like, what, you know, whether you prefer the small, using a small brush, whether you prefer using a large brush, whether you prefer, you know, the separation you get with a pipette. So you can literally do as much as you like, okay? So I'm going to use a small one for the first layer. So I'm going to have that ready to go. And again, I'm going to go into my water first. Let's get some water down. And it is important to get the water down. If you don't have a watery layer, the paint doesn't react anywhere near. You'll get a little bit of a reaction, but it doesn't separate as nicely, okay? So that you can see as much going on underneath, okay? I prefer with the water. You just don't get as much of a separation going on. So I'm just going in, add my cerise, which I love. And I'm going to go straight in with the small brush this time, so that I should get some smaller drips, because the smaller the brush, the smaller drips we're going to get. And I'm kind of thinking I want to do this because I'm thinking the next layer I'm going to do the pipette over the top, which is going to get me some larger areas. But as I said, you need to work fast. You have to work quickly. You don't want it to dry, because as soon as it starts to dry, you don't get as much of a reaction. And it doesn't have that same impact. I'm just going in. Let's get over there. That's good. And again, we need to give it a dry. I usually find as well, it's the last layer. When you put the last layer on, whatever your contrast colour is, that's when it tends to really show up what's going on underneath. So I'm going to get this dry quickly. Okay, so what I'm thinking is, I said about adding, maybe you could add a little bit of stamping between layers. So I'm going to grab, so you're going to want, if you're going to do this, I've just thought of this, but you're going to want, it has to be a permanent ink, okay? It needs to be permanent. It can't be anything that's going to react with water, Okay, so permanent ink. I'm going to use the archival. And then I've just grabbed a script stamp, but it doesn't have to be a script stamp. It could be anything. The idea is that we're going to see this kind of poking out, or I'm hoping we're going to see this poking out underneath our reaction that we're going to get on the next layer. So I'm kind of thinking I'm going to add a little bit of stamping. Now, I don't even know if this is going to work. Okay, but I've kind of just had the idea, so I'm kind of thinking, let's give it a go. Let's just give it a go and see if it works. If it doesn't, we won't do it again, will we? But it's nice to try. So, and of course, it doesn't have to be, I just picked a script stamp really quickly because it was already on my desk and the ink pad was on my desk. But it could be anything. It could be flower stamps, and then you're going to see partials. You'll see partials of the flowers. Maybe that would work. I don't know. We'll have to give it a go. So I do need to dry this again because obviously I did stamp then with archival ink, but it does take a little bit longer to dry once it's over a painted surface. So I'm just going to get it dry, and then we're going to go in with the next layer. Okay, so we've got that. So I'm thinking, do I want to go over with the pea coat, which is dark, or do I want to go over with a lighter colour? Thinking I might not get the impact of the stamping if I go over with the pea coat now. You know what? What I am going to do, I am going to go with, white. I'm going to do my next layer in white. So I'm going to get my white ready, only because I want to see if you can see that. I want to see if you can see that stamping underneath. And I'm just thinking the dark might be too dark. So I'm just going to wash my brush again. Just give it a wipe off. Let's give it a wipe off. So let's go in again. I'm going to go in with the water again. Let's just give it a brush over. This is why I kind of know, because the colours are so much more vibrant when you put the water over. So I know that it would look really cool if we went back in with the gloss glaze over the top. So I'm just going to go in with the white. I'm going to work really fast. I'm going to go in with the pipette this time so that we get a larger, specks. Ooh. And obviously with the pipette as well, we can be a little bit more definite and a bit more precise of where we're going. I'm loving that. I'm thinking as well we could go in with, we could put a layer underneath of embossing, as long as we make sure that in between each layer as long as we make sure that in between we go in I'm loving that. And I'm thinking I'm going to go in and add a few splats as well. So we've got those bigger areas. Then I'm going to go in with my little brush and just add just a few little ones. In between. Ooh. See, this is a very different look. This looks very different to the first one. I'm getting much smaller separation this time. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my brush, dipping it in the alcohol, and I'm just rubbing it along the side so that it's not quite as full. And we're getting a very different look. So this is looking very different to last time, but I am liking that you can see this that's going on underneath. So let's give it a quick dry and then we'll have a look and see what we've got. I love that. I love that you can see that stamping coming through. And this looks very different. This gives you can kind of see what it does when you're using the pipette to drop it. You still get that little bit of white in the middle. So it kind of separates, but you're still getting that little bit of white in the middle. So that looks, I mean, straight away, even if you did the same colours, that looks very, very different. You've got a very different background going on. I'm thinking even, you know, a little bit of gold embossing on top of this would look really cool. Gold embossing would definitely look good on top of this. Right, what I am going to do, I'm going to leave that to dry for a bit longer. Let's get another one. Let's get another one. Let's see. What can we do next? What can we do? What can we do? Let's go with, I'm kind of looking at what colours I've got kind of sitting on my desk. So I'm thinking maybe I've got some Lily the Pink, so maybe we'll go with that. I'm wondering, Lily the Pink. Let's go, right, so Lily the Pink, I'm going to go with Cerise. No, I'm not. I'm going to go, yeah, and Firebird. So I'm going to go with 2 pinks and an orange this time. I think I'm going to go with those 3 this time. So I think I'm going to start. So looking at the colours that I've got, my Firebird is a translucent, my Cerise is a semi-opaque, and my Lily the Pink is opaque. So I think I'm going to go translucent. I'm going to do it in that order. Translucent, semi-opaque, and opaque. I think I'm going to do that. I think if wanted, Linda, to add book text underneath. I think you could do that, but what you would need to do is make sure that you've got a coat of matte medium over the top, because you don't want it to be too porous. That's why I said you wouldn't want to use printer paper or something like that, because you don't want the surface to be too porous, because obviously when you start adding water, it will dry too fast, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go with these colours this time, and I'm going to go over the top with the dark colour this time. I'm going to go over with the pea coat, because I want to see how it looks with that dark colour over the top. So I'm just cleaning my brush. I'm going to go in. Do you know what? Do you know what I think we will do? I think we're going to go... I think I'm going to get the banana as well. I'm going to do 2 colours on the first layer. I'm going to do 2. So, because why not? So I'm going to go in with my... I'm going to go in with my yellow. Maybe we'll do... Should we do stripes? Maybe we'll do some stripes. Let's see what that does. And then I'm going to go with my Firebird. Let's just go in. I have no idea what it's going to look like. But that is the idea of experimenting. We will see. Okay, so let's get that dry. Okay, so what if I turn it? I've just had another thought. What if I turn it and what if I do... I don't know whether it's going to work. I'm going to get ready with my cerise and my Lily the Pink, I think, and I might do stripes going the other way. I don't even know if that's going to work, but I'm going to give it a try. I've done different colours underneath before. I've never done stripes. I don't know if that's going to work or not, to be honest. But I've got the 2 different colours of pink, so I don't have to worry about contaminating the brush. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go into my water. Let's get the water down. Water. I'm going to go in with cerise. Let's do a couple of... Let's do a couple of stripes with the cerise. Why not? I don't know what this is going to do. It's either going to work really well or it's going to go horribly wrong. But we will find out, won't we? Okay, and you can see straight away when I put that one on, Lily the Pink, that we got much more coverage because it's an opaque. I'm going to go back to the bigger brush. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with it. Let's go in with the pipette, see what that does. Ah, yeah. Because that's thicker, we need more. I love that we've got those different colours going on underneath. Okay. That looks very different. So that one's looking very different. So I need to get this one dry before we put the top coat on. Let's give this one a dry. I've got quite a lot of liquid going on there. That's okay. Do you know what? I'm just going to grab... So I'm just going to grab a bit of kitchen roll and I'm just going to dab just a bit. Because we've got there's quite a lot of... Quite like that. Quite like that as well. It's giving... There's a bit of a texture. There's a bit of a texture vibe going on. Okay, let's give that a dry. It does look very psychedelic, Fiona, you're right. No, so Deb, I used alcohol both times, but I used it with a brush first, and then I used it with a pipette afterwards to get the bigger areas. Okay, just gonna give this a wipe over, just so nothing sticks to it. But I really like that. And then my last layer for this one, I'm going to go with the Peacoat, which is the darker colour. I have, Claudia, let me find, I did a journal page for the new release, and I did do that. I used the same colours. Let's see, where is it? Where is it? This one. Okay, I'm going to bring this in, because obviously you'll only be able to see the edge. But if you look at this one, I used different shades of pink in the background. So I did different shades of pink, and then I used 2 shades of turquoise on top. Beverly, could you add water through the stencil? I'm guessing you could, but you would, I imagine you would have to leave the stencil on. I imagine you'd have to leave the stencil on until everything's dry, because it's just going to automatically want to spread out. Yeah, so Deb, what you do is you use the bigger brush. So you use the bigger brush with the water first. Do a layer of water over the whole page. Then you go in with whichever paint colours you want, and you go on and add those paint colours, okay, onto your page. Once you've done that, then you can go into the alcohol and drip on the top, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So what I'm going to do, Peacoat is going to be my last colour on this one, because I want to see what it's going to look like with the darker colour over the top. And I like Peacoat. I'm going to clean my brush off again. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, I can see what you're saying, Beverly, about adding the water through the stencil, but I just think you would have to leave, I'm thinking you'd have to leave the brush up, the stencil on there until everything's dry, and then it might end up sticking. Might be a bit of a problem. So I'm going to go in. Oh, did I, Deb? Maybe that's why it didn't work properly. Maybe it wasn't working as well because I had done that. Maybe that's why, Deb, that it didn't work as well, because I was looking and thought this is not working as well on these colours. Maybe that's why. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to go in and let's just add some water. I think I am going to grab some. This is why you don't want to confuse. See, if I've done that, that's why you don't want to be confusing your colours, your water and your alcohol. So I've got that on there. I'm going to go in. So this is my... So this is the Peacoat. So this is a navy blue. I have done this with black before as well. It looks lovely. So I'm just going in. I'm just adding some Peacoat over the top. That'll do, I think. I'm going to go straight in. Let's make sure I get the right one. I like that with the... I like that with those colours underneath. You could do it rainbow as well, I guess. Rainbow would look really cool. So I'm going to go in as well. Let's go in with the pipette and add, maybe add a couple of bigger ones. No, it won't react when it's dry, Linda. Once the paint's dry, that's why you have to dry in between layers. But once it's dry, it won't react. It needs the water mixed with the paint to react. If you try and do it just with, if you try and do it just with paint without a watered layer underneath, it doesn't react as well. It doesn't react as well. You'll get a little bit, but it doesn't react as well. So I'm going to get this one dry, and then we'll have a look, see what we've got. liking that with that dark. That kind of, it mutes it down, but you can still see those colours underneath, which is great. What I'm going to do, so let me just bring these back in a second. So we've got these, we've got 3 different ones. What I am going to do, I'm just going to grab, it is beautiful with that pea coat over the top, because it mutes it down enough, but it's really pretty. I'm going to see, I am pretty sure I've got some gloss glaze. I'm going to grab it because I want to see what it looks like if I go over the top of these with gloss glaze. So bear with me a second. Let's see, what have we got? Ignore me while I'm talking to myself. Metallic glaze, satin glaze. Let's see, what's that one? Don't need that, that's dry retarder. Metallic, matte glaze, pearl glaze. Satin glaze. Oh, gloss glaze. Gloss glaze. So what I'm thinking is, I want to see how different it looks with the gloss glaze over the top, because I think it's going to make a difference. So I've just grabbed some PaperArtsy gloss glaze. I'm going to get a clean brush. I'm going to get a clean brush with this. I'm just going to go over the top. I just want to see. Yeah, see, straight away I can see that that has intensified those colours in the background. I don't know if you can see that, but it has intensified those colours. Can you see how the colours have really, it's really brought the colours out? I'm going to do this one as well. I'm going to do all of them, why not? Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, definitely, because it gives it that wet look. Because it's giving it that wet look. Yeah, it's just bringing those colours out. Yep, that's really making that intense. And obviously you could do a few layers. Let me just get that dry. I just want to have a quick look when it's dry. This one. Well, that definitely works, because that's really brought those colours out. Let me just wipe this off so that I don't stick. Okay. Yep. Loving those. And it definitely brings the colours out by adding that glaze over the top. Most definitely. So what you could do, obviously, these could be used as background. So you can just create backgrounds with these, which is what I did on the original project, and just use them in the background. You could also use these for stamping on top of. So I wouldn't, in this instance, I wouldn't stamp on top of this one. And the reason I wouldn't stamp on top of this one is because I've already stamped the black in the background. Okay, so if I stamped a flower over it, you won't get a clear, it won't appear to be a clear image because you've got the black in the background. Okay, so if I was going to use this as a master board to then make flowers, etc., I would just make sure that I didn't add any black stamping. So this one would be ideal. So this one I could quite easily, I'm wondering if I've got a stamp there that I can, I'm wondering if I've got one. Have I got one that I can use? I must have something. Let's see, what have I got? What have I got here that's ready to go? Let's grab a stamp. I must have a stamp. Let's grab one of these. Okay. So I'm going to grab the flower from this set, just so that you can see, what it would look like if, let's grab, in fact, you know what? I can't find a block. Let's do it without a block. Otherwise I'm going to have to start hunting around. We're not going to do that. I'll do it by hand. So I'm thinking, if I stamp this up, I think this, if you're going to use it like this, I think lighter colour background is going to work better. Because then you're still, yeah, the new butterfly would definitely work. But I think the lighter colours, you're going to get more of an impact. You're going to get more of an impact of your stamp. Okay, so let's take this off. Ooh. Oh, look. Look at that. Look how amazing that flower. I'm going to be making flowers. I'm just going to be making flowers forever now. Look at that. I'm going to get that dry. I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to cut it out and see what it looks like. Find some scissors. Let's find some scissors. Where are you? Oh, do you know what? Let's use these ones. They're not perfect, but we'll use those. Right. I'm going to just... I can't even see. I haven't even got my glasses on, so I apologise if this cutting out is really terrible. But I just know this is going to look gorgeous. I'm too excited. I just want to cut it out and have a look. Oh, I'm just going to be making loads of these. I can tell already. I can tell I'm going to be doing this for everything. Oh my. Oh my. Is everybody else as excited as I am? Because I am really excited right now. My cutting out is absolutely rubbish. I've got no glasses on. I can't see what I'm doing. These are not my cutting out scissors. I don't know what I've done with them. I've obviously just got far too excited. But, you know, we'll get the point, won't we? We'll know what we mean. Oh my, oh my, how stunning. How stunning is that? And you would never ever be able to colour in something that looked like that. Yeah, so Claudia, the colour combo that I used for this one, the oranges and reds, was I used banana as the base coat, then I used Firebird, then I used red lipstick. You could also use cherry red, and then I used cerulean over the top. How gorgeous does that look? That is stunning. I've got to do more of these. I'm thinking as well, maybe on the darker, you could do, you could stamp embossed and cut it out. Maybe white embossed or gold embossed. That would look really cool. That would look really good, wouldn't it? So, okay, so I'm going to put those there. Let's put those there. Let's put the flower on top because that looks absolutely stunning. I need to be making lots. I need to be making lots of those now. So, I'm not going to do any more. I've kept you an hour already. Well, an hour and 20 minutes. See what I mean? I just keep waffling on, don't I? I get too excited. But I'm just going to bring this back in because I just want to explain. Obviously, we're not going to do the whole page. Obviously, this is the new butterfly. So this has only just come out. I just coloured this with coloured markers. Okay, so just coloured markers. I didn't do anything fancy to this whatsoever. And all I did in the background was I drew out a circle, and then I painted over it with white paint. Okay, and I kept the brush quite damp. Kept it quite damp because then you can still see that there's something going on underneath. Okay. So, you know, the other thing obviously you could do is add some, you could add some gold embossing, you can add some stamping over the top, you can add some stenciling over the top. This is just a technique that is going to give you a nice base layer to begin with, okay? So, and as I said, it will look different every time you do it, depending on the colours that you use. That's why I would suggest doing them even smaller than this. Just do small, you know, squares, maybe 3-4 inch squares, and play around with different colour combos, and then write on the back what colours you've used, because that way you can see which colours you prefer, which colours you like, and then you'll know when you go to do a page, you'll know which colours are your favourites. Okay, but you know, at the moment I'm kind of thinking that's my favourite combo, although I am loving this one as well. I'm loving that colour as well. So yeah, really, really gorgeous. So I'm going to leave you there. I've taken you an hour and 20 minutes already. I hope that has given you lots of ideas of, you know, and gives you that inspiration to try this, to give it a go. See what, you know, try different colour combinations and just see what you can come up with, you know, because it is so quick and so simple. And as I said, you will get a different result every single time. So every single time you do it, you will get a different result, different colours, different sizes, depending on what you use, you know, and how you put it together, which order you do your colours in. It will make a big difference. Okay, so I hope that you've really enjoyed this. I am, you know, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you for, you know, granting me your time. I hope that you enjoyed. And I will see you very, very soon. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.